So a lot of people have been asking about home recording studios and how to set up your own home recording studios. And an important part of that, sort of the beating heart of that, is the Digital Audio Workstation. We also call it a DAW, D-A-W. So I thought I'd spend a little bit of time talking about that. And what I want to do is I want to kind of fly you through that a little bit without going into a whole lot of detail on each one, because obviously I could teach a course that would last for weeks on each one of these things. What I'm really trying to do is I'm just trying to give you a survey of some of the more popular ones so that you can get some idea of what's out there, and hopefully I can lead you to do your research on the right ones. If you want to know more about any one or other, leave something in the comments and maybe I can do a video on that Digital Audio Workstation. For right now, we're just kind of survey the landscape a little bit, and let's get into it. So the ones that we're going to look at today are the most popular ones and the most important ones, I think, to understand. And this is just from my perspective. Everybody has their own favorite. I'm obviously leaving a lot of these out. So if I've left out your favorite digital audio workstation, I'm trying to keep the video as short as I can and just skim the surface. And what I want to do is I want to leave it to you to tell me what you want to hear about. For the absolute beginner, there's GarageBand version 10.3.5. The advantage of that is it's free. There's MainStage 3.5. Those two are both Mac only products. Logic Pro 10.5.1 is a Mac only product. Then there's Ableton Live 10, Steinberg Cubase Pro 10, and Avid ProTools 2019. So we'll talk about those. We'll also talk a little bit, we'll touch on the subject of control surfaces. Let's take a look. I want to give you a couple of examples of digital audio workstations. This is kind of how we'll approach this. I want to flash some screens in front of you so that you've got some idea of, okay, what does it look like? If I open this application, what am I looking at and what am I working with? I also want to give you, at a very, very high level, kind of a comparative analysis. So the idea is, what tool would I use in what context? Depending on what I'm doing or what use case, what tool would work best for me? So the first one I'm showing you is GarageBand 10.3.5. This comes with your Mac. So if you buy a Mac, you already have this. To tell you the truth, there's so much that you can do with this that it would be very hard to outgrow this until you really start doing some serious stuff with recording. This is a great place to start. Another reason that this is a great place to start is because it has an upgrade path. So you can do your projects in GarageBand, and then by the time you say, you know what, I can't do this anymore, I need Logic Pro 10. And you get Logic Pro 10, one of the first things it's going to ask you is, hey, I see that you got some GarageBand projects. You want me to bring those over? And you go, yeah, sure. I thought you'd never ask. And it brings them right over, and you just keep on going. Except now you got a little bit of a learning curve because you have to learn about some of the more advanced features. And again, Logic Pro doesn't hold your hand quite as much as GarageBand does. That's another reason why GarageBand is a good place to start, because it's easy to use. It kind of holds your hand on a lot of stuff. So if you're looking here, it's got pump and bass, classic analog, sweeping pad, it's even got pictures of the instruments and stuff like that. That really is just how you can get started, and it's got so many templates, right? And you look at it and you say, gee, that looks like the band setup that I have. All right, I'll just click on it, right? So here's another example. You've got a keyboard. You can have a virtual keyboard here. And if you don't have a MIDI keyboard to plug in, you can actually use the one on the keyboard. This is pretty easy to manipulate. Here's another example where we're just kind of going through. Some of these are MIDI and some of these are audio files. Very, very easy to manipulate. So you also actually get notes. So if you really want to look at the notes and you're doing kind of MIDI manipulation and stuff like that, then you've got notes at the bottom. And if you actually want to produce a score or something like that, you can do that. This is not something where you're going to be able to produce a usable film score. You'll need other tools for that. But you can do some basic stuff with this. And the price is right because it's free. Now I want to talk about another application. Now this application does come with a price. It's $99. This one's pretty cool, but the purpose is different. This one is for your live application. So if you want to jump out there and say, you know what, I want to play on stage. I'm not interested in recording at all. If I do recording, maybe I'll use GarageBand, and that's great. But I need something that's going to remember my sets. I need something that's basically got all the full capabilities and all the instruments that Logic Pro has, but I don't want to pay the price of Logic Pro because I'm not trying to record. I'm just going to do live performances, and I need to be able to set that stuff up. Now this is interesting because you can't do that in Logic Pro. Here's an example of where you're setting up your patches, you're doing all this other kind of stuff. For 99 bucks, you're literally downloading all the instruments, and I mean thousands, almost tens of thousands of instruments that come with Logic Pro. They come with MainStage as well. And then you have the ability to build these patches and sets and then program them prior to your show. And then you can actually click between these using a foot switch, and boom, now you got your next set and all your instruments are all set up. And then you go to your next one. And you've got compressors, you've got synthesizers, you've got every instrument you can possibly imagine, you've got reverb, you've got special effects. All of this stuff comes with it. Now what we're looking at is Logic Pro 10.5. Once upon a time in 2002, there was a little company called eMagic, and soon thereafter they got purchased by Apple. And today they are the single most popular digital audio workstation in the world. It's dirt cheap compared to everything else I'm going to show you. It's $199, and that's only if you are not buying the educational version. If you have a child that's going to school, or if you are a teacher or a professor, or if you are in school, then you can purchase the bundle, and it's $199, and you get Final Cut Pro, you get compressor, you get motion, and you get a Logic Pro. It's a great deal, and it comes with thousands and thousands of instruments, and these instruments are fantastic. It's very comparatively easy to use, much more so than any of the other digital audio workstations on the market. Very intuitive. The graphics are fantastic, so you really feel like you're using a physical workstation. Here's an example, like if you want to use a compressor and you've ever used a real compressor. Looking at this doesn't take any time at all to figure out because it's just like the real thing. Now this is not. This one's a little higher tech, the Chroma Verb, but it's pretty. I'm kind of old school. I learned recording engineering literally back in the 80s. This kind of stuff doesn't appeal to me as much. There are just all kinds of unlimited plugins that you can get for this from third parties, in addition to the stuff that Apple sells and the stuff that Apple provides that come with this. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about is Ableton Live version 10. Now, relatively speaking, this guy's the new kid on the block. It's been around since 2001, but it has only become popular in recent years. One of the things that makes it unique, aside from the very odd graphics that you can see here, it's not 3D at all. It's about as flat as it can get. I think that's weird. It has this concept of session and arrangement. So we use session for live performances and arrangement to edit and sequence tracks. So this is best for live performances, and especially if you're doing things like loops and DJing. If you're doing hard pumping techno or raves, this is your tool, hands down, period. You can sample tracks and manipulate those samples in real time. That's just crazy. Audio editing, not so much. You can do audio editing, but you'll never have the capabilities that you have in something like Pro Logic 10. It's good. You're going to shell out about $349 for kind of a basic edition, all the way up to $599 for a more advanced edition. The next version we'll talk about is Steinberg Cubase. Now, what's interesting about this is this was one of the first digital audio workstations ever, and it dates all the way back to 1989, but at that time it was MIDI only, but since then it's evolved. Another landmark that they made is in 1996, they introduced the first VST plugins, and then VST instruments only 3 years later in 1999. If you want to do film scoring, this is your baby, because it has excellent MIDI, outputting finished musical scores. The MIDI capability in this is unmatched. Essentially, they've been doing it since 1989. I mean, forget about it. Those are the good things. The bad thing, it's really hard to use because kind of the workflows that were in place in 1989, they haven't really gone much far beyond that, so it kind of feels weird compared to other digital audio workstations that you use today, and it'll set you back $579. Once again, it just depends on what you want to do with it, right? Here's another example. The graphics are pretty good, but they're dated, and the workflows are also a little dated. Now let's talk about Pro Tools. Now, Pro Tools 2019, these guys have been around since 1991. Once again, they've been around a long time. They are now the industry standard around the world. They're not not the most popular, but they're the industry standard. And by that, what I mean is if you walk into a recording studio anywhere, they're using Pro Tools. That's it. That's changing a little bit because if you walk into anyone that does movies and such, they're using Pro Logic and Final Cut Pro 10. If they're just doing sound recording, Pro Tools is the answer. What makes this unique is they have kind of a hybrid approach where they've got the software, but they also have a very rich set of very expensive control surfaces that are integrated with this, and they sell those together because they figure money's no object for you because you're a recording studio and you just want to throw money around. It's best for track recording and in particular for live applications. If you want to do mixing and mastering, I don't care what the question is, this is the answer, right? Not good for writing music. If you're trying to write music or compose music, I'm going to argue if you're trying to do film scoring, this is not the answer at all. The cost for this, I hope you're sitting down. It starts around $2,500, and I am skipping some of the entry-level stuff that you can't really do anything with. For something that you can actually produce a real revenue-producing project, you're going to shell out at the least at $2,500, and you can get to $10,000 before you even know it. And once again, the interface on this thing is a little outdated. Here's another example of Pro Tools 2019. And here's another, this is kind of the mixing board, right? Later, you'll see how this kind of interfaces with the control surfaces that they sell. So let's talk about control surfaces. Pro Tools is made by a company called Avid, and what you're looking at right now is you're looking at Avid Pro Tools on the iMac computer on the right and the second monitor on the left. In the middle is something called Avid S6, and for the low price of $114,000, you can have one of those too. And this is a control surface that allows you to control the software. Since we're on the subject of home recording studios, I think that's probably out of most of our range, but just to talk about it for sheer entertainment value, here are in the left side here and the bottom right, you can see some close-up views of the Avid S6. In the top right, you can see the Avid S3. That one I think is still like $50,000 or something like that. Now this next one, I want you to look at it. Now this can be used to control Pro Tools, but you can also control Pro Logic, Steinberg, anything you want because it connects with a lot of these. I want you to try to guess how much this is. Looks pretty cool, right? It's not as much as you think. That table that you're looking at, even with the control that's sort of embedded in it and that mouse that's there, is only about $3,000. And then each of the tables, each of these slates that's in it is $2,000. So for less than $5,000 or $6,000, it's about $5,000 or $6,000 the setup that you're looking at. That's not bad because these are touch screens and they're ginormous. It's pretty cool, huh? Now this is viable. What would this look like in a home recording studio? I want you to look at this guy and the smile that's on his face and how he's using this bad boy. I mean, this is pretty cool. This is probably on the high end of a home recording studio, but it's not entirely out of reach, is it? This is kind of sweet. I like it. And I like that big ball too. And if you've ever tried to do recording where you're trying to turn a knob with a mouse, you'll know what I mean when I'm talking about control surfaces. Control surfaces are important, and especially in editing videos. This is mine. I have a control surface, and I think they're pretty essential if you're doing sound recording or if you're doing film editing. Using a control surface, at the very least, a wheel of some kind. Logitech makes a keyboard called the MK. Well, I have the MK keyboard, but they make another one, and I forget what the name of it is, but it's something like the MK something, and it's $200, like $199, but it has a wheel on it. I gotta tell you, that wheel is pretty important because it eliminates the need to try to turn a dial with a mouse. This one that I just showed you is Contour Shuttle Pro version 2. It's from a company called Contour. It cost me 99 bucks, so not expensive at all, and it works with everything. It works with Final Cut Pro, it works with all the Apple applications. It works with Logic Pro 10. It works with all the Adobe products. It works with Lightroom. It works with Excel, PowerPoint. It works with over 200 applications, so it's well worth the money. So let's talk about, I'm going to show you what I've got in my recording studio. I'm using ProLogic 10, as I had mentioned before, so that's ProLogic 10 that I've got up there. It comes with an example project that actually is Billie Eilish, Ocean Eyes, and it's pretty neat because it's actually the recording that she made with all of the parts. But it's pretty cool because if you want to know, okay, how do they really do this in a studio? You can look at it and you can see how they broke out the track. You can see how they arranged the major buses and things like that, how they organized the various special effects on each of the buses and how they did the send effects and things like that. And it can be very educational to see how they handled all of that for the instruments and also for the voice. You can learn a lot just from sort of breaking this down and looking at it, right? You can also kind of reverse engineer it and then try to sing on top of it yourself or something like that too. So it's something I was trying to get my daughters to do. That's my setup. That's all I have for Digital Audio Workstations. If you have more questions for me about Digital Audio Workstations, leave them in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next video.